Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. I'm Shawn,
I am Anthony.
and we're doing this smack dab in the middle of the day, and I think it's just going to be us two because it's a pretty unusual time for us to do this. So everyone else, I'm sure, sends their regards, but let's get into some fucking horror. What have you seen lately, my friend?
Oh man. Saw a couple. I've only seen probably about four films as of late. But yeah, I'll roll off the first one here. It was War of the Worlds, 1953, directed by Byron Haskin, starring Gene Barry and Anne Robinson. Yeah,
Nice.
pretty damn cool. Still holds up. Big fan of the original H.G. Wells material. Love the film. It's very of its time. It's very 50s. Every gal has all their hair is done up properly, even amid like atomic blasts. Everybody still looks fantastic and beautiful.
Nice.
Um, it's hysterical. It's kind of like it's really weird. You see like how women are treated in this film. I don't really talk about this much, but it's just so in your face when you watch it, where it's like this, the Anne Robinson's character, she's, this like world-renowned scientist, and she's serving coffee to people, like coffee
Jesus.
yeah, she's reduced to like serving coffee and biscuits to people. At one point, after, the alien invasion, they wake up and everything's destroyed around them, and the first thing the other scientist says is, "Oh, we should go find some breakfast." And I immediately in my head said, "Make me some eggs, bitch." And then 2 seconds later, she's flipping fucking eggs for him in a kitchen.
Oh my God.
That wasn't even from memory. I just made it crack, and I was like, Jesus Christ! Like they really treat her like shit. Like I said, it's very of its time.
Right.
Special effects are cool for what they can get away with back then. I mean, there is like one alien in a rubber suit that looks ridiculous as hell. But what was always menacing to me was the flying saucers with their, heat rays that, disintegrated everything. Those were far more terrifying than the monsters or the Martians ever were. There is that one iconic scene where you see the gal back up in this abandoned house, and you see the hand kind of latch onto her shoulder, and then you see this curiousness of the alien itself, like, what are you? What do you do? What's your anatomy? I mean, it's not like she got felt up or anything, but the guy freaks out and throws a stick at it, and it runs away and scurries off. And then all the warships come over and blow the fuck out of the house, and that's it. But they get away, obviously, scot free. I'm not spoiling anything because if you haven't read the book, heard the serial, or seen the film by now, well, I mean, it's a fucking 70-year-old film.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Go
plus
fucking read it.
it's been reabsorbed and kind of, I feel like even if you haven't seen it, I mean, I haven't seen, I don't even know if I've seen the thing in its entirety. When I saw it, I would have been like a small child. But you've seen things that have borrowed from it. So there's really no way to do a spoiler for it because I feel like it's in the, I don't know, it's almost like it's in the collective unconscious at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's been around forever, and like I think I'd mentioned to you before, during the late '80s, they ran a action sci-fi horror show. I think it was like on Fox TV. But there was a War of the Worlds television show that I used to watch, and I think it only ran for about 3 seasons. I don't remember any notable names in it. I think it only had like one guy was from Predator or something like that, and not much going on. A lot of cheesy, motorcycle jumps and machine guns and
Of
stuff like
course.
that. But there was some. But I mean, the warships were there, and there were Martians. The Martians did look a lot creepier. They kept them like in kind of like Tarman in these like containment things, and they would get out every once in a while and go wreak havoc wherever the hell they were at. There's a lot of interesting stuff like that. But this movie, I haven't seen it in probably, I'm not gonna lie, 20 years or so, and this just recently got released through the Criterion Collection, so I managed to pick that one up just recently and add it to my collection, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I sat down and watched it. It's a great piece of film history. and still fairly effective as far as male chauvinism goes. But beyond that, I mean, yeah, it's still pretty cool. It's got a lot of great effects for its time, and I'm glad I own it. I do recommend it to those who do want to partake, or have read the H.G. Wells material but haven't seen it yet. Please do.
That is, I know I saw the early 2000s Tom Cruise. Was that Spielberg that did that?
I believe so.
So I know I saw that, and I liked it at the time. That's the most, I feel like, the one that's the freshest in my mind. But even though the 50s, I feel like there was a little bit more of a blurred line back then between horror and sci-fi, because I don't feel like horror was as established as a genre. So sci-fi utilized elements, or tropes or whatever that would later become associated with horror. So like just the creepy kind of vibe and stuff like that. Like you described that, the famous scene with the hand on her shoulder and whatnot. And the disintegrating flying saucer blasters and stuff like you mentioned. I feel like a lot of that had a more horrific element to it. So, now, I mean, I feel like, the two genres obviously still cross pollinate because Event Horizon comes to mind immediately,
of course,
but sci-fi is a little bit more like, there's a lot of sci-fi that is just sci-fi, whether it's space opera kind of stuff or whatnot. But yeah, I feel like back then it was a little bit of a murkier relationship between the two, and movie audiences, I feel like, benefited from that heavily. So that's cool. I should definitely rewatch that or watch it in its entirety. The show is interesting. I wonder if that was after the success of V.
Oh, much later, because V was what, late 70s?
No, V was, I think, 80s. I'm pretty sure it was 80s on Channel 5.
I remember that great scene of that lady eating the cat.
Oh man, that V was another one. It was just, that was creepy as hell, and just really, I don't know, it had a lot of ties to horror, I feel like. Yeah, man.
And then I remember them rebooting V again, probably about, I'm going to say 10 years ago now.
Oh yeah, it had the chick from Firefly in it. It had more of a Lost kind of feel to it.
I didn't hate it, but it got canceled pretty quickly.
Pretty quick. Yeah, I think
the budget was too big, honestly.
Yeah, probably. I think that was trying to take advantage of the vacuum after Lost ended, but I also feel like Lost kind of changed TV, but also that format of that show kind of died with it in a way. So there were a bunch of shows after. I remember there was one called Alcatraz that was Sam Neill. The chick from Fringe, I think, was the female lead, and then Hurley from Lost, and it had some weird, I don't know.
I love that first season of Fringe because it was kind of like X-Files. It was very Monster of the Week or very, Crime of the Week. But interesting shit. I always enjoyed that one.
I really wanted to. I left off at the end of one of the seasons, and I would like one day to go back. I remember, man, you remember in one episode of Fringe, they actually mention the X-Files. Like, they're like, the Fringe and the X-Files programs have, like, burdened the government. It was like during some kind of a trial where they're going to shut down their department or something. And I remember thinking, like, oh my God, they just placed it in the same universe as the X-Files. Like, holy shit.
I don't remember seeing that, but that's,
yeah, it was really cool.
But in that case, then Millennium also falls in that as well, because I remember they crossed over the Lance Henriksen show with X-Files at some point as well. I think there was a crossover, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, there definitely was. And there was a character that was shared between the two that, he was the sci-fi writer. It's on the tip of my tongue. It was there's next episode, Jose Chung, I want to say it is. I believe he was in both shows, and there might have even been another character that was in both shows at some point. It's I don't know. Those were some interesting times for TV. They did some interesting stuff. Not all of it worked. I did some X-Files episodes. In fact, I realized I completely forgot about this. I never watched it religiously, and I didn't even really like the X-Files until I kind of got sucked into the mythology, what's now known as the mythology episodes. But a friend of mine, Brown, he last year was like, dude, let me give you a playlist and curate for you the best like Monster of the Week standalone non-mythology episodes. And I went through probably 3/4 of that list he gave me, and every episode was tight. Everyone was great. My only complaint with the X-Files is a complaint I have of a lot of 90s shows. Not all, but they really overdo the music sometimes, where it's like, I understand this is a tense moment. Can you back off the strings? Like, it's kind of making it cheesy. But yeah, I mean, and also there were a lot of horrific elements. There's that one episode that would never be replayed about the inbred family or whatever.
I believe was it called Home?
Yes, super fucking creepy.
Yeah, it was disturbing. Them digging around in the field and fighting like the inbred fetuses buried, in shallow graves. Yeah, very disturbing shit.
Yeah, very disturbing. Pretty cool.
What about you, man? What's the last thing you saw?
Well,
or something you'd like to talk about? So
I got two big ones. Last week I talked about The Dark and the Wicked, which I felt while it was a good movie, I was disappointed in it. It's not really the movie's fault per se. There's definitely some things I think could have been done differently with it that would have improved it, but overall a well-made movie. But I had expected it to scare me, and so it didn't. So it was kind of, I don't know, it kind of took the wind out of my sails when it was over. I was like, oh, man. So I felt like I was due. And I think it was Monday, I came home from work and I'd been putting this one off. Benson and Moore had produced a film this year called After Midnight. And it was written... And it's written by the actor Jeremy Gardner, who people will know most recently from Bliss, where he played Clive. But he's been in a bunch of shit. Like I feel like everybody will recognize him. The Battery, Mickey Keating Psychopaths, Like Me, The Mind's Eye. He was in Spring, although I don't remember him in Spring. He might have been a smaller character. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So he wrote this movie, stars in it, and co-directed it with Christian Stella. And, dude, this is probably going to be my movie of the year. This was such a great viewing for me. I loved this movie. The basic setup is, and it's told in present time, and then you get flashbacks. It's a relationship. So it's Gardner's character and then Bree Grant, who recently directed a movie I've been wanting to see with Angela Bettis called 12-Hour Shift. So that's on my list. But they're a couple. They move into this home that's been in his family for years. It's kind of dilapidated. It's kind of out in the middle of the woods. It's clearly in the South. I don't remember if they mentioned where. It was a town. Like I feel like I know this place. It reminded me of places in Ohio where I've been. And basically, they run a bar in town, and they live kind of out in the sticks. And you get elements of what their relationship in the past when it was good, like when they first met and as it evolved. But then present day, she has left. He doesn't know if it's permanently or not. He wakes up, she's not there. There's a note, I love you, but I had to leave for a while. He has no idea if he's ever going to see her again. But in the interim, every single night since she's been gone, a monster comes to his front door and tries to get into his home. So he's told all these people about it. Nobody believes him. Bree Grant's, so her brother, her character Abby's brother is played by Justin Benson. He's the town sheriff, and he thinks that Gardner's character is nuts. And he basically, everybody's like, dude, she's gone. Pull yourself together. She'll be back. Stop drinking into a stupor every night. And what he does is, and it reminded me a little bit of I Am Legend, the book, where it's like every night he kind of fortifies his home and then sits on this couch that he's got in front of the door with a shotgun and just drinks himself unconscious. And at some point, the monster tries to get in, and then he tries to kill the monster. I don't want to say anything else, but I just loved it. It's very polarizing. What I've noticed from seeing things online, there's not a lot of the monster. I feel like there's the right amount, but a lot of people were like, fuck this. I wanted more monster. I didn't want to see this movie about these people's relationship. I don't know. I thought it was exactly measured. I thought the ingredients were measured exactly how they should have been, and it just bowled me over.
But it's done kind of minimalist, though, isn't it? Because that's just the way the Battery was, where it's just two guys in a car the entire time during the zombie apocalypse.
It's very minimalist. I haven't seen Battery yet. In fact, I'm going to order this from Arrow because the Arrow version right now has Battery with it. And I haven't seen that yet. So I'm really looking forward to that now because Gardner also directed that. But man, dude, I don't know. It's a $4.99 rental on Prime right now. And I'm telling everybody I know, like, it is so fucking worth it. Since I saw it, my friend Missy and Ray from this show both saw it and really, really liked it. Man, I don't know, just really great performances too. There's a scene where the Abby, Bree Grant's character and Gardner's character are basically talking about the relationship, and it's a long static shot. And as I'm watching this, I realize, like, holy shit, like, there's no edit here. This is fucking acting. Like, they did this. They nailed every line, every emotion. Like, it's just so impressive. So yeah, but in a very minimalist, like, you can tell it didn't cost a lot. And I feel like, I don't know, Benson and Moorhead now, it's like we can sing their praise for the stuff that they direct, but now also like the stuff they're producing, like they did this and they did that She Dies Tomorrow. And I feel like there's another one on deck from them, but I can't remember what it is. But anyway, like anything their name is attached to, I will now watch. So
solid gold. I'm gonna have to sit down and watch that one myself. I do remember when Arrow announced that it was gonna have the Battery attached as well. So I'm like, at some point I'll pick it up. I believe there is a new Arrow sale coming up at the end of the month.
I figure it's got to be Black Friday, right?
Yeah, just pre-Christmas. I think it's gonna last a couple days in the beginning of December. I'll be sure to pick that one up for sure because you've got me. You've got my interest peaked on it, so I'll definitely give that one a go. Another film I'm going to go ahead and talk about is The Cleansing Hour that dropped on Shudder, and it's 2019, directed by Damien Lavec, and starring a bunch of who gives a fuck. It's got an interesting concept. We've spoken about this before, where there's a fake televangelist guy who does exorcisms and whatnot on his internet show, and as soon as the cameras stop, he's a total douchebag and goes to bars and bangs groupies and stuff like that. It's absurd. And then they eventually get someone who's actually possessed on their show, and then everything goes awry. I will say that there's some pretty interesting practical effects in this. There's a couple of decent kills. The dialogue is pretty lame. The acting is a tad over the top at times. If you're already paying for Shudder and you're enjoying, whatever other programming they've got going on there, if you've got nothing else to do, I say throw it on for an evening. It's definitely worth a once over. I'm not going to sing its praises. It's not that amazing, but it's definitely a niche for people who like those exorcism type films. It's definitely up your alley if that's one of your things. I happen to like some of those films, so I said, why the hell not? Let's give it a go. Let's say 6 out of 10. So I mean, you'll get a hair of enjoyment out of it. I didn't hate it all too much, but there's some just acting in it that's downright atrocious, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. This film, might be for you. I'm going to say it's worth a once over for anybody already paying for the service. Why the hell not? Yeah. But not my favorite film of the year, which is kind of why I try not to dabble in Shudder territory too often.
Right.
But I didn't hate it entirely.
I watched the first maybe 20 minutes of it, and I feel like we talked about this before. You had started it. I don't remember if I edited it out of the previous episode, or it would have been 2 episodes ago. But I don't know if it's the actor's fault or if it's the way that the dialogue and the direction was. But that it opens, it's pretty cool with that exorcism. That I feel like if you just read the thumbnail description, you know that it's not a real exorcism. Right, because it's they this show and it's fake, and then all of a sudden it's real. But the minute they call cut on it, that actor that plays the exorcist, the priest, you're right. He's so over the top. I mean, it's like immediately he's like, "Hey, who's doing shots at the bar?" And then they're doing karaoke, and he's like trying to bang the groupies. To which I'm thinking, but it didn't even make any sense to me the way it was written, because these girls are coming up to him in the bar and they're like, "Oh my God, you're that hot priest that does exorcisms, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Yeah, another round of shots," or whatever. And
that's how I want to be recognized in the future. Oh, you're that hot priest.
Nice.
No, I'm kidding.
It doesn't even make sense, because if you were a fan of the show, you wouldn't you wouldn't be able to groupie the guy because he's a fucking priest, right? So he's like keeping up character while like laying it on like about the exorcisms and stuff while he's feeding him alcohol and trying to bang him. But I'm like, but wouldn't that then be him out of character enough for anybody to be like, "Oh, this is obviously a sham"? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it definitely, that was from that cut moment. Everything I saw after that for like 10 or 15 minutes led me to I was just like, this, it's not for me.
Now, all the characters are scumbags. You don't care about any of them. They're all demon fodder, in my opinion, which is what they're supposed to be. There's no redeeming qualities about really any of these characters. So you kind of want to see them all lined up to get chopped up. And, eventually you do get some of that, but not enough of it.
Right.
But enough to, sate the bloodthirst for a little bit. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely would encourage people to watch it, because I've seen a couple people online say they really liked it. So this could just be, it could definitely be somebody else's thing. So I don't want to step on anybody's toes. This is just my opinion. Like you said, just my opinion.
Like I said, if you're already paying for the service, why the fuck not? Go for it.
Yeah.
What about you?
So last night, I had a very pleasant surprise. I watched the New Mutants, which, I knew I was going to watch it. I don't remember what movie I originally saw the trailer before. It was hyped as like the first Marvel horror. Well, I mean, it was the timeline there of ownership is weird, because it was Fox who owned the X-Men characters and were doing this as the first like X-Men horror movie. But now Disney, who owns Marvel, owns Fox. So now, all that shit's under the same roof. And ultimately what that does is, for this movie, there's never going to be another one, because all those Fox X-Men movies are going to be left behind, which for most of them they should be, I feel like. And they'll most likely reintroduce the X-Men in a way into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, blah, blah, blah. It's not the purview of the show, but just as kind of an addendum to this film, which is definitely a horror film. But I was, I wanted to see it. The trailer I originally saw looked great. It was pushed back from I think January or February 2019 to, it was supposed to come out in April this year, and then COVID happened and it got pushed again, blah, 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 blah. So it finally hit VOD. It's $5.99 to rent on Prime. I would say it's absolutely worth everybody's time if you have any interest in this at all. Man, I was so surprised. I liked it so much. I thought all of the characters, the casting, and apparently by saying this, I'm setting myself up to be called like a racist or a racist sympathizer, because there's a lot of people crying foul about some of the casting being whitewashed, which it wasn't. But the casting was great. They used the characters Danny Moonstar, Ileana Rasputin, Sam Guthrie, Berto DaCosta, and Rain Sinclair. All classic New Mutant lineup people. I'm unfamiliar with the storyline that adapted from the comics, because even though I read X-Men and X-Factor in the 80s when Claremont was writing it, I only picked up New Mutants occasionally, just prohibitive at the time, cost prohibitive at the time. Fuck, man. Especially Anna Taylor-Joy from The Witch is Ilyana Rasputin. And Darkchild is one of my favorite X characters. Just big fan of the Infernal storyline and the fact that she was, molded by the demon Belasco and then afterwards Nastor and Syme to be this like demon queen. And they don't exactly do it, but it's there. And they utilize Limbo a little bit and the Soul Sword or whatever the fuck it's called. Yeah, I mean, it was a horror movie. I was really impressed, and I really liked it. I liked all the casting. I liked all the performances. Cannonball, Sam Guthrie is, I forget the actor's name, but Will Byers from Stranger Things. Man, very, very solid. It basically deals with them being, Danny Moonstar's kind of the character you follow into this world where something happens to her. She wakes up in this like institution where there's this Dr. Reyes character who's like, Danny, you're a mutant. Your power just manifested. Some terrible stuff happened back where you lived. We're going to keep you here and keep you safe and, try to help you. She meets the other characters that are all in there. And it's pretty much like a prison. Like there's a solitary where whenever anybody misbehaves, they get thrown in this room that, that's basically a toilet and four walls. And then weird shit starts happening. Horrific shit starts happening. And it's them dealing with it. And I fucking loved it. So
I wanted to see it, and then I was contemplating whether or not this is going to be another Fox Folly, and I somehow steered myself away from it. And then I saw, what's her name, Anna Joy?
Anna Taylor-Joy, I think it is.
Anna Taylor-Joy, yeah. And I mean, I've liked everything the chick has put out since she started. And then I mean, obviously with the success of The Witch and whatnot, she's managed to keep my attention. So I guess based on this, I may give it a go. Still not high on my radar, but I'm glad to hear somebody actually sing its praises, because I've heard a lot of shit talking about it actually. So yeah,
I'd say it probably is. Of the Fox X-Men movies, I've seen up to and including Days of Futures Past. Well, and Logan, which is, Logan's amazing.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, this is my favorite of any of those movies. I think most of those movies aren't, Days of Future Past certainly wasn't great. The original three, I mean, I just feel like those are like the Raimi Spider-Man movies where it's like they're great in my memory, but I've never revisited them and I never intended to. But I'll see superhero movies, but I don't usually rewatch them ever. They're just not, life's blood to me. So, but this I would rewatch. Like, I think because it crosses into horror in the way it does. And man, I don't know. It brought me great joy last night. I was very, very happy. So there you go.
It's funny. I just revisited Days of Future Past, the Rogue cut last week. Cecilia hadn't seen it yet, so we sat down and watched that. And unfortunately, I watched Apocalypse, which was just horrible. It just
didn't look good. I don't know.
No, I saw the trailer and was like, I can't watch that, and I'm glad I didn't, because it ended up being one of the worst. And then I heard they just continued on with that in Dark Phoenix, and it was just as bad. And they already did that storyline as well with the first three, so I don't need to see that again. And I can't imagine that Apocalypse had been improved upon as far as their story writing goes for the X-Men series. So I'm done with it, and that's why I remember hearing about New Mutants, and I was like, I don't know if this is something I want to get into, but I think I'll give it a go now based on your review.
It works as a standalone horror flick. It's
sounds good.
More of a horror flick, I think, than it is of an X-Men movie, which is a plus. So
cool. One of the last ones I saw was Itsy Bitsy from 2019. Mm-hmm. Written and directed by Micah Gallo. I think he comes from the Adam Green camp, did a lot of visual effects. He worked on Frozen, Hatchet, The Innkeepers, and actually Almost Human. Oh. This one stars Elizabeth Roberts, Armand Darboux, and Denise Crosby of Star Trek: The Next Generation fame. Also, we know her as Mrs. Creed from Pet Sematary. Really interesting synopsis. There's a guy, he's an art collector or artifact collector. He's borderline invalid, and this gal, gets this great job, has to move her and her son into the boonies and care for this guy, which has very little to do with it. But I guess he's got an artifact that's, stolen or cursed, and inside of it has a giant spider. And, well, I'm terrified of the motherfuckers. So
Yeah,
anything that's got, giant creepy fucking spiders in it, I'm pre-terrified before I even watch the film. Arachnophobia is, one that still gives me nightmares to this fucking day. I own it because I like being scared.
Right,
And so
exactly.
same thing goes with this one. It's weird because the giant spider story is kind of like the backdrop. The majority of what's going on is this really rough, like really, really rough family drama going on between this mother and son. This kid's obviously has to be uprooted and moved to the middle of nowhere, and this isn't the first time it's happened. So he started getting used to this, like, roving lifestyle where he knows he's not going to be there for very long because his mom's kind of a screw up. And I'm not going to spoil it, honestly, because they get into that in as the story progresses, and it's actually really, I think therein lies the horror in this film. And it's a lot of hard imagery, and a lot of it's implied. I mean, there's nothing like over the top that's gory, but there's stuff that happens that shapes the future that she's created for herself, or the present rather, that she's created for herself, that is far more terrifying than this fucking spider. And then throw on top of it the giant fucking spider. Wow. So it's really interesting how they kind of disguise this family drama as a creature feature, but it works surprisingly as well. I definitely recommend people giving that one a go. It is streaming on Amazon Prime right now for anybody who hasn't sought out the Shout Factory Blu-ray. And again, that is available as well for a pretty decent price. If you're interested, if you have seen it, shout off in the comments when we post about this thing. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts about this, because it's a decent film that's kind of underrated. A lot of people haven't really gravitated toward it yet. But again, it is streaming on Amazon. Give that one a go. That's a solid review that I'm giving it. So I really, really implore you to.
Nice. I'll definitely watch it.
Yeah, it's pretty rad, man. What about you? You got anything else?
Not really. What else you got?
I think I got one more. It is Swallow from 2019, directed by Carlo Mirabella Davis, starring Haley Bennett. Not really a horror movie. I mean, it's got some pretty interesting, like, what is it? What would I say? It deals more with like psychological issues that lead to compulsions. Obviously, it's not a secret. I think it's called pica. I guess it's a disorder where people like to swallow things.
Okay.
And it's just uprooted this woman's life, and kind of takes over her mundane day to day, which is actually quite terrifying in itself. It's ugly. It's one of those movies where by the end of it, I still don't know whether or not I feel relief or if I feel happy for this person. There's a lot of fucked up that happens, and it's not like overtly gory or anything like that. It's not a scare film. But it does delve in a tiny tad of, body horror, and it's gross. It's got some weird shit in it.
It sounds like body horror. I remember reading something about it when it was first coming out or announced or in production, and I was like, oh man, that sounds rough.
Yeah, like I said, not too terrifying, but it's got the right amount of creepy and cringe to keep you entertained, but definitely not a horror film. I would say that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that's the last thing I saw.
I guess would the sister piece to that movie then be this movie I have no intention of watching, but if
it's a porno, it's not.
No. There's a movie called Butt Boy, and I think it's about a guy that puts things up his ass, and somehow that
What?
it sounds like it's similar. Where it's not. I feel like I saw somebody talk about it online, where it's like it's not a horror movie; it's more like a body horror movie or whatever. And it's I don't know. It the stills I've seen that movie definitely has a look to it that I like, but I'm just I it doesn't it sounds like it's kind of what it is just to be shocking, maybe. I don't know. Again, if I'm wrong, like you said, somebody leave a comment and let me know, like, no, this is worth watching, or stay the hell away from Butt Boy.
I may have heard. I think it sounds familiar. I haven't sought out any. I probably saw the name for it and was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, it's an awful title too. No matter, even if that's what it's about, it sounds like a second grader title. Maybe that's the point. I don't know. That could be, but as of right now, it's not on my radar. But I constantly see the thumbnail on Amazon. So
That's weird. So what? That's up for rent or?
I think it's included on Prime.
Ugh.
So
Even for free, some things. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Where did you see Swallow?
Swallow I saw on Showtime actually. So I have the Showtime streaming service. So I saw it on there. I may end up picking it up at some point. It was released by Shout Factory or Scream Factory rather. So I may end up grabbing that. I think it was an IFC film, and that they tend to do distribution for them.
Okay.
I may grab that at some point if I find it for a decent price. Do you want to talk Predator news for a second?
Yeah, definitely.
So there's going to be a new Predator movie.
Which is interesting in and of itself, just because I totally thought you hit the nail on the head when Marvel or Disney acquired Fox. They acquired Alien and Predator. And I remember you saying, like, you're probably not going to see another one of those movies for a long time because it doesn't fit into the Disney thing. And I kind of thought you were, and also because especially with Predator, I feel like they fail all the time, right?
I was wrong. They're doing it.
Yeah, right away. Who is it that's attached to direct it?
Dan Trachtenberg, 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yes.
And that's a quality film, man. I really do enjoy the shit out of that one. That's a great flick.
Man.
Especially towards the end. If you haven't seen it by now, screw you. You should have seen it already.
Yeah.
As the scope broadens and it becomes this like ridiculous sci-fi film, you're like, wait a minute. I want to see more of that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that may show up in a future Cloverfield film, but beyond that, it's really interesting what that guy did with it, and I like his visual style. I'm really excited to see what he does with Predator. However, I was really excited to see what Fred Decker did with Predator, and now I'm fucking terrified of what they're gonna do with it. But I hope that it's in good hands or good enough hands that they're not gonna say let's do a PG-13 Predator film and see where that takes us. But I have like I think you said too, you have a little bit of hope, but yeah. I am terrified.
I mean my thing with those movies is I don't think it's the director that's at fault or the writer. I think it's always the studio. I think I think that they just can't. They really want to win, and they don't want to leave it in anybody's hands as far as like a director, and so they just do things to them during the production or maybe in post-production. And I don't know. I mean, I'm speaking from a gut hunch and based on I was really looking forward to that last Predator movie after the first trailer they dropped. And I'll never forget, you called me after you left the theater and you gave me your review, and I'm like, I ain't wasting my fucking money on that.
Yeah, no, it's fucking bad. There's no redeeming qualities about that film. It is just bad all around. I mean, kudos to them for making another great. No, let me rephrase that. Kudos to them for making another rated R Predator film that at least has a decent amount of gore in it, albeit some of it is CG. I'm glad that they were able to do something on a bigger level, bigger budget, but it was just a trash film, unfortunately. And I've said it before, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's so fucking bad. Alien versus Predator Requiem is like mountains higher in quality than what that movie was, and that movie wasn't all that great either. I mean, but that one was just utter shit. So yeah, I mean, I'm terrified to see what they're going to do with the Predator franchise, but I'm also shocked at how soon, you know, after that, you know, piece of shit just came out. What was that, 2017? So was it 2017?
No, because we started this in 2018, so that was 2019.
2019?
Yeah, because we started this show October of 20. Excuse me. We started this show October of 2018. So, and that was in the winter, so it must have been end of 2018, early 2019.
Yeah,
so,
that was just
that corpse hasn't even cooled yet.
But we'll see. I mean, I will say this about Trachtenberg. I mean, they're capable hands, but you know, depending on whether or not we have a lot of studio interference, we may get another shit film. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see.
I have hopes because Predator is just near and dear to me. The character, the comics, what have you. I mean, all that stuff is still stuff that I cherish from my childhood, and hope that it will survive well beyond my death, and we'll just see what happens with this one.
It's so funny how that is a franchise where, you know, franchises from our childhood, like when you said that, you know, something near and dear from your childhood, and mine as well. When people like Michael Bay get a hold of things like Transformers or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's a shame when they soil it, but it's almost understandable because they're adapting a pre-existing body of work. And, you know, Predator started as a movie, so even though there is a wealth of material in comics, it still started as a movie. And so when people now have this franchise and they're fucking it up, it's not like they have to adapt a pre-existing body of work. All they really have to do is make a decent new entry into it and you know, help fill out the world, help, you know, build new stories. And they just can't do it, you know? I mean, that you showed me that Predators movie.
Yes.
With Adrian Brody. And, you know, that was, if I remember correctly, that was based on a script that Robert Rodriguez wrote before I think he was even in Hollywood, or maybe when he first came, where it was a sequel to the original Predator, where these people end up on that homeworld or whatever it is, and then they find, like, the guy that Lawrence Fishburne plays was actually in that original script Dutch, which makes perfect sense, right? So when they announced it, unfortunately, Schwarzenegger was still governor. Unfortunately, for many reasons, but he was still governor, so he couldn't be in it or whatever. And I just never wanted to see it because I was just like, you know what, it's just not gonna work. And you showed it to me, and while it was not nearly as bad as I thought that it was gonna be, it's still just essentially forgettable.
It's goofy.
You know, I mean, it has its moments, but who cares? You know, the thing is, like, I'm sure the 2019 one, it has moments too, but I don't want a couple moments. I want a good fucking movie, because the problem with Predator is that first movie's so fucking amazing. It's like, it's not going to do to just give me a couple, like, oh, you know, the movie kind of sucked, but it's a couple good moments. It's like, no, you know, I don't know. It's such a shame. And I guess I just don't understand why it's so hard. It feels similar to Alien, you know, where even though I like most of the stuff that has been done under the Alien moniker, there's just this weird indecision with the property that I feel like constantly keeps the studio from letting a creator go, you know, full bore into it and just do something great. And it just usually, you know, I mean, like Covenant I like, but essentially it's like, Ridley Scott, you returned to basically just make a fucking slasher movie. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. You know, it's like, oh, I don't know. And now, you know, there's been a lot of talk recently that there's going to be another Alien movie that Scott's going to do, and it's going to have a lot more to do with the engineers, and that they, you know, possibly never got to the home world of the engineers or some. And it goes back to that thing where it's like, I just don't even understand in Prometheus, which I love. Why didn't it just line up with the end of fucking with the scene in the original Alien with the space jockey and the fucking like. I just don't
So
understand.
I don't know. I don't know if you heard anything else about that. He's been blabbing a lot and talking about the direct link between basically closing the circle with this last film or this next film, where it's supposed to lead right up to where the feel of how the first derelict spaceship on LV-426 got found. So, or how it crashed there and the contents therein. I have a pretty solid feeling I know what it is, and he's hinted at it as well. I'm not going to blow it for anybody, but I guess I want to see it and I don't want to see it because this may just be the end of the Alien series, completely. I wouldn't mind seeing it handed off to, different directors. I kind of want to see where it goes in different directions. Again, another series where it's, there's another wealth of mythos and storylines from, comic books and novelists, and it goes on and on and on and on. Chris told us about a new Alien series on Audible today.
Oh yeah, Out of the Shadows. Yeah, so we're planning on probably listening to that and maybe doing an episode on it, which would be super cool.
I agree. That'd be pretty rad. So, I mean, like I said, I'd like to see Alien where it could go somewhere else. As far as Ridley's involvement in it, he may be done, and I think that's why the last film just ended up kind of just being a slasher, where it's like, all right, let's just get some kills in here, and let's get rid of some. Basically, just line everybody up for Alien fodder, get them all chopped up, and have it be that, and the fans will be satisfied that way because at least they get to see aliens rip a bunch of people apart. However, I mean the storylines have also been known for their drama pieces, so I'd like to see something a little bit more well acted, something a little bit more involved, maybe throw in some espionage. I mean, because there's so much shit they could do with this as far as I don't know, I'm rambling now, but
no, not at all.
You know what? Give me fucking Earth Hive. Give me Earth Hive, and I'll be happy. Let's see Earth get fucked. Like I'm good with that.
I mean, I don't know. It is very frustrating, and I still wonder. That Raised by Wolves, I fucking loved that, and that's Ridley Scott. And I noticed his son directed. I think it was the last episode of this season, and I think I said on this show after that aired, like, there's obvious similarities in the mechanics of the androids. And while I'm pretty sure Raised by Wolves is not a part of the Alien universe or mythology, when I saw his son as a director, it made me wonder, because either he's setting him up for a new ongoing universe that maybe because Ridley Scott's, up there. Like, I hope he lives another 20 years, but he's up there. He's, I think, pushing 80, I think.
Yeah. He talks about always doing a new Alien film, and I'm just like, are you going to be around? And I really hope he is.
I do too. But I wonder if he's going to hand it off to maybe his son. His son it was a great episode he directed. So, but that made me wonder when I saw his son's name on that episode. Like, is this maybe going to match up with Alien at some point? And a friend of mine at work mentioned he had read. I'm not saying that he's wrong, but I can't fact check it, and I didn't hear this. He said he read that starting with Prometheus, this is not the same Alien universe that we've been seeing in the other movies. I had never heard that, so I kind of disbelieve that. I think maybe it was either misinformation or he misinterpreted it or misremembered it when he said it, because that seems really weird to me. But I don't, I mean, it would definitely explain why Prometheus couldn't just match up with the first movie, and I know this is now this new one Scott's talking about bringing it full circle and explaining that, but I feel like now he's got to over-explain it because it would have just been fucking simpler to do it to begin with. True. Why draw? It's the same thing where it's like, why didn't Elizabeth Shaw and David just get to the engineer homeworld where they were headed, instead of now they're saying, oh, that wasn't the engineer homeworld, that was a different planet. And it's like,
it was an outpost.
But all of that is it just seems so non-committal, and it's such sloppy fucking story writing. It's like just the shortest distance between 2 points, a straight line. And I just don't understand, like, if we had gotten something amazing with Covenant, I'd be like, I see why you did that. I still don't see why they did any of that. And as much as I enjoy both Prometheus and Covenant to a lesser degree, but still enjoy it, it just all feels so convoluted. I just feel like, you know what? Can we just pull one? Remember they said, what's his nuts? They were going to like eliminate everything after 2, and then give us a sequel to 2 that had Newt and
Hicks, yeah.
and like that's
So
what
what
I
was his
wanted.
name? The guy did the guy did District 9. What's his name? That's who was going to do it.
I'm blanking on it.
And I just remember seeing all this like beautiful character art, and Hicks going on with half his face really scarred up from the alien acid. And I was like, this is what I've been dying to see since fucking forever, and I would love to see this. But I remember, what was it? Scott intervened and was like, no, I want to get my next film out before you do this, and shut that whole project down. It's such a fucking shame, because what we got in return wasn't all that amazing. I know Covenant is just a showcase of what the black goo can do, to an ecosystem or any other environment to ruin or contaminate it. But beyond that, it's just, we're just, reiterating what we've already said. It's just a slasher. But we'll see what happens with that whole universe, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully his son can pull off some interesting stuff. I mean, we're looking at the future of that now, like with Cronenberg's son.
Yeah, right.
What he's been doing. So a lot of guys are being groomed in a certain direction to keep a certain art style and art form going, and I'm all for that if that's if that's the future. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
but that's all I've got, man.
Same here. But real quick, speaking of Brandon Cronenberg, Possessor hits Blu-ray soon. I forget the exact date. The director.
4K.
Yes, the director we were talking about is Neil Blomkamp, by the way, who did District 9 and was slated to do that Aliens movie that got canceled. But anyway, Possessor hits Blu-ray soon, and there is a great interview with Brendan Cronenberg on the podcast Nightmare on Film Street, and he really goes into. I actually haven't even finished listening to it yet, but he talks about it took 8 years to make the movie, and he just talks about some of the stuff that he researched for it, and it was cool to hear him talk about it. So I would definitely see the movie first to everybody, but I'm buying that one. I already pre-ordered the fucking soundtrack on vinyl. I loved everything about that flick. So yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to that. And then Papa Cronenberg gonna star in a new season of that show Slasher.
Yeah.
So that totally, there's a lot of Cronenbergs on the horizon. If Crash hits Blu-ray, in 2 weeks?
Is that for Criterion, right? The Criterion collection?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the Arrow edition had been delayed, something to do with some legal issue, but I'm sure that'll get cleared up fairly soon. But I'm looking forward to picking up one of those. I don't care who puts it out. I need to have that film because fuck yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, that's all I have. So I guess we will leave you at home with that. So for another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast, I'm Shawn.
I am Anthony.
And we'll be watching the stars.
With our pants down.
With our pants. Of course.